हरिः ओं नमः सर्वेभ्यः। अद्य कृदन्तप्रकरणस्य 870तमः पाठः। अस्मिन् वर्गे निष्ठाप्रत्ययोः प्रक्रियायाम् इडागमः कथं भवति अस्मिन् विषये अग्रे सूत्राणि पठामः। प्रारम्भे वन्दनम्। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नमस्कृत्य तदूक्तिः परिभाव्य च वैयाकरणसिद्धान्तकौमुदीयं विरच्यते। ह्यस्तनवर्गे निष्ठाप्रक्रियायाः अध्ययनम् अस्माभिः प्रारब्धं। तत्र रूपनिर्माणप्रक्रियायाः आदिस्थानि पञ्चसोपानानि दृष्टानि। तत्र षष्ठः सोपानः नो चेत् षष्ठं सोपानम् इडागमविधानं। निष्ठाप्रत्ययोः इडागमः कथं भवति। तस्मात् पूर्वम् एकं विषयं वक्तुमिच्छामि। So in the yesterday's class, I discussed this particular slide, which is from the yesterday's class, the itaretarashraya between ktavatu nishtha and the nishtha. I explained this in significant details. I also gave certain examples which were given by the Bhashyakara. It turns out that today morning I was chatting about this with one of our senior members, Kalyana Krishnan, and he gave a very beautiful example of this itaretarashraya, which can be seen in the real life. And I think it's worth being shared with everybody, all of us over here. So this is typically seen in the US over here, that a couple which is expecting a baby typically gets to know the gender of the baby, whether it's a male or a female. That's a typical tradition in the US over here. And then once they get to know the gender, they can, decide the name of the baby in advance. Then sometimes go to the shop and probably procure some toys or some other necessities for that baby. So for example, now in this particular situation, this Anyanyashraya can be very beautifully captured. So for example, a lady who is expecting a baby goes to a shop and procures, say, a toy. And then the shopkeeper asks, for whom is this toy? And then she says, this is for Devadatta. And who is Devadatta? Devadatta is my son. Oh, but you don't have a son. And then her reply is, I will have a son. His name will be Devadatta. And for that Devadatta, which is not yet existent, I'm here procuring a toy right away. So that's exactly the situation that fits over here, that there will be pratyayas called ta and ktavatu. They will be called, will be used in the bhutadhikara. They will be defined in the pratyadhikara. They will be referred as nishtha. So let me just define their term called nishtha right over here. So this kind of analogy actually helps, at least help me to precisely map this particular Anyanyashraya to a very useful real life example. So I just wanted to share that. And now we can move back to the sixth step, nishtha pratyayoho idagamaha. Tatra ह्यस्तनवर्गे इडागमस्य विषये प्रारम्भे कानिचन सामान्यसूत्राणि अस्माभिः दृष्टानि. प्रारम्भे अनिट् धातुः अस्ति चेत् तत्र एकाचोपदेशेनुदात्तात् इति इडागमः निषिध्यते. वेट् धातुः अस्ति चेत् अपि यस्य विभाषा इति इडागमः निषिध्यते. उदित् धातुः अस्ति चेत् तत्र क्त्वा प्रत्ययस्य इडागमः विकल्प्यते. अतः पुनः यस्य विभाषा इति निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः इडागमः निषिध्यते. ईदित् धातुः अस्ति, उगन्त धातुः अस्ति, आदित् धातुः अस्ति चेत् साक्षात् सूत्रैः इडागमः निषिध्यते. अन्ये धातवः सन्ति चेत् इडागमः भवितुम् अर्हति. So today on this slide I have added a few numbers just to explain or just to show what kind of abnormalities or what kind of discrepancies we are going to deal with. So there are around 300 anit dhatus, 40 weight dhatus, a bunch of numbers are given over here. All these things add up to around 600. Assuming the total number of dhatus to be say 2000 or 2100, we still have 1500 dhatus or so which are still in the regular category. So only 600 or dhatus are there in this, exceptional category where you have to remember something, and then remaining 1500 dhatus are in still the normal category where you get an idagama. So it appears using these numbers that the exceptions are actually not that high in number. So yesterday, as I was bragging probably that nishtha prakriya is extremely complex, you will have so many exceptions and so on. So the numbers don't speak the same language. The numbers are saying that more than 1500 dhatus are still behaving in a normal regular manner, and some other probably bunch of 500 600 dhatus are behaving a little abnormally, or you have to concentrate on that. Now it turns out that these numbers are correct, but it turns out that if you look at 2000 dhatus of the dhatu patha, not all 2000 dhatus of dhatu patha are actually seen used in the practice. So this is a very useful exercise, and if you make, or if you group together and make this exercise, that you take some 20 25 30 important books, say some mahakavyas, all mahakavyas you take, some other natakas you take, some other whatever khandakavyas you take, some other important texts like Ayurveda or Natya Shastra and other texts you take, and if you scan all these important, say 50 100 books, and find out the dhatus that are actually appearing in the practice in all those books, the number hardly goes up to 800 and not more than that. So this was a research actually done by a well-known Maharashtrian grammarian called V.K. Rajwade, who was also popularly known as a historian, itihasa tadnya. He was also a Sanskrit grammar expert, and he did this analysis, and he came to a conclusion. He has also his own dhatu patha published on his name, which contains only those dhatus which are actually seen used in the literature, and that number comes out to around 800 to 900. And now if you focus on those 800 dhatus, around 400 to 500 dhatus are actually in this top bucket, which means 70 to 80% of the normally used dhatus are going to behave mysteriously when it comes to nishtha pratyayas. Think of literally any dhatu that you use in your day-to-day life, and there is a high chance that that dhatu falls in one of these upper buckets. So for example, kru karoti, bhu, say pracha, da, ni, say pacha, drusha, gama, bhuja, bhunte, stha, whatever, dhava, even dhava, dhavati, that becomes the dhautaha, and then pravisha, krudha. So there are so many such dhatus that you can think of your day-to-day life which fall in this upper category over here, and that is the reason why studying all this is very important. So don't get carried away by this number 1500. A bunch of these 1500 dhatus are simply Patha Vedas. They are probably theoretical. You don't see their usages in the literature. So it's just a number that is giving some wrong impression over here. Pramukhyena tu asmakam prayoge vidyamanaha prayah sarve dhatavah अनिटः सन्ति, वेटः सन्ति, उदितः सन्ति, ईदितः सन्ति, एतादृशम् एतेषां विषये इडागमस्य निष्ठाप्रत्ययोः प्रक्रियाया निषेधः कृतः दृश्यते. Somebody is asking, can you share the list of those 800 dhatus? I am trying to procure that. I don't have that list. I only know that there is such a kosha called Rajavade Dhatu Samskrita Dhatu Kosha, and there have been references for this Dhatu Kosha in various books that I have come across, but I have not yet successfully procured that list. If anybody has this list or anybody can get it, you can share it with the group, and I would be very happy to actually take a look at those 800 dhatus, because this is again what I have read from the books. I don't have a list first hand with me. Anyway, so with this background, now probably it might be clear why we should be focusing on all these important udit, idit, uganta, all these cases. For all these cases, tatra idagamah nishidyate. अन्ये ये धातवः सन्ति तेषां विषये सामान्यरूपेण अत्र इडागमस्य प्राप्तिः भवति, परन्तु अग्रे कानिचन सूत्राणि विद्यन्ते, एतैः सूत्रैः एतेषां विषये अपि इडागमस्य निषेधः क्रियते. So that is the special list of sutras that we are going to learn starting today, probably 2 or 3 more classes. तत्र अष्टाध्याय्याः इडागम प्रकरणे विद्यमानानि निष्ठा प्रत्यय विशिष्टानि सूत्राणि, specifically targeted for the nishtha pratyayas. Tatra kutrachit nishtha pratyayo nityam idagamah uchyate. So maybe those dhatus fall in this top category, and therefore on a general scale the idagama has been blocked. That idagama comes back by this particular nishtha pratyayo nityam idagamah. Kutrachit nishtha pratyayo vaikalpikah idagamah uchyate. कुत्रचित् साक्षात् इडागमस्य निषेधः कृतः अस्ति, कुत्रचित् यस्य विभाषा इति निषेधः कृतः अस्ति, कुत्रचित् निपातनं कृतमस्ति. So there are 2 more categories. There is a nipatana in the lokas and there is a nipatana in the Vedas, which I have not written over here. कुत्रचित् निपातनं कृतमस्ति. अनेन प्रकारेण एतेषां सूत्राणां षट् वर्गाः भवितुम् अर्हन्ति. Now, what I have done on the next slide, I have actually created a document. This will be very useful for all of us in our studies. I will link this document on the course page. So it says bit.ly idagama sutra list. And if you go to that particular document over here, I'm showing it in the screen on the screen right now. We have all the sutras of the idagama prakaranam starting from 7 to 8 all the way up to 7 to 78. The sutra is given in the next column. A quick karyam, the summary of what the sutra does, is given in the third column. In the last column, if that particular column is colored, then it means that the sutra is required for the nishtha pratyaya. So don't look at the actual color right now. Just scan the list to see what all these are colored versus what are these are not colored. And any cell you see which is colored is a cell that we need for the nishtha pratyaya. And then these particular dhatu, these particular sutras are further classified into 6 different groups based on our convenience of study. So you can see over here in the green color, there is a set 1 which is written, which is nityam idagamaha. So that maps to, if you go to the previous slide, that maps to this first bucket over here, nityam idagamaha. If you go to the sheet, the second set in the yellow color is vaikalpikaha idagamaha, that maps to this vaikalpikaha idagamaha. The third is sakshat idagama nishedhaha. If you go to that sheet, set number 3 is in the purple color, idagamasya sakshat nishedhaha. Set number 4 is idagamasya apratyakshaha nishedha, that is yasya vibhasha. There is a fourth entity, idagamasya apratyakshaha nishedha. The fifth and the sixth sets are the nipatanas. So idagama vishishtam nipatanam is set number 5 and idagama vishishtam vaidika nipatanam is set number 6. So this way all the sutras of the idagama prakaranam, and you can take a look at the karyas of all of them. Some of them are not related to nishtha at all. So for example, here thal pratyasya idagama nishedha. So thal is something in the lit lakara. Or you have vasu pratyasya idagamaha or san pratyasya idagamaha. So idagama section contains sutras for various different types of pratyayas. The ones that are colored are for the nishtha section. That is what we will learn in this particular class. Ataha अनेनैव क्रमेण गच्छामः. We will refer to this particular document for next 3-4 classes, 2-3 classes while the idagama adhyanam is going on. Our goal for today is to cover the sutras for set 1 and the sutras for set 2. So we have 4 sutras of set 1, that's it, the green color. There are only 4 sutras of set 1 and there are some 6-7 sutras. 2 are over here and then there are some 2 over here and some 1 over here, 5 sutras. So 5 sutras for the yellow section and 4 sutras for the green section. That is what we will cover in today's class. So prarabhamahe tatra prathamah ganah asti nishtha pratyayoho nityam idagamaha. Nityam idagamaha ityukte kim? सामान्य रूपेण तत्र यस्य विभाषा नो चेत् अन्येन केनचित् सूत्रेण इडागमः निषिद्धः अस्ति तद् बाधित्वा तस्य अपवाद रूपेण इडागमस्य नित्यं विधानं भवति इति अत्र अर्थः. So the first sutra, now we are actually going to do to and fro between this particular sheet. So let's actually go to the set 1 nityam idagamaha. The first sutra over here is in nishtayam 7 to 47 in nishtayam. And this is what I was referring in the yesterday's class also. Tasmat purvam kimasti pashantu tatra wait dhatunam pariganam krutamasti swarati suti suyat suyati dhuyodittu va ityanena wait dhatavaha pariganyante radhadibhyasya ityanenapi wait dhatavaha pariganyante tadanantaram nirah kushah ityanena sutrena nira upasarga purvakah kush dhatuh tasya wait tvam dattamasti. Idanim अस्यैव धातोः विषये अयं धातु वेट अस्ति अतः यस्य विभाषा इति निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः इडागमः तत्र निषिध्यते तद् बाधित्वा अस्य इडागमस्य पुनः प्राप्त्यर्थम् अग्रिमं सूत्रं तत्र दत्तमस्ति इड् निष्ठायाम्. अतः इड् निष्ठायाम् इत्यनेन सूत्रेण 7 to 47 इड् निष्ठायाम् इत्यनेन सूत्रेण किं भवति? निरः कुशः इत्यनेन निर उपसर्ग पूर्वकः कुश धातुः यः सामान्य रूपेण वेट धातुः अस्ति तस्मात् विहितस्य निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य नित्यम् इडागमः भवति. निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः नित्यम् इडागमः विधीयते. So look at this. Nir plus kush plus kta. In general, there is an option for the idagama for other pratyayas. Because there was option for idagama for other pratyayas, yasya vibhasha would have permanently stopped the idagama for nishtha. But thanks to idnisthayam, it actually reverses the process. It brings the idagama compulsory. Nirkushita iti atra rupam siddhati. अतः अत्र अस्माभिः दृश्यमानः प्रथमः धातुः निरकुश इति तत्र विद्यमानं सूत्रम् इणनिष्ठायां. कुशनिष्कर्षे इति क्रियादिगणस्य सेट् धातुः अस्मात् धातोः विहितयोः निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः नित्यम् इडागमः भवति. So as long as when you are talking about the standalone kusha dhatu, it is a set, so you anyway get the idagama. When nira upasarga comes over there, the dhatu immediately becomes weight. So upasargas can also change the set property of a dhatu. Not just the meaning, not just the pada, but the set property can also get altered. Standalone kusha dhatu is set. उपसर्ग पूर्वकः कुश धातु निर उपसर्गः अस्ति चेत् सः वेट् भवति. इडागमः विकल्प्यते. अस्यां स्थितौ अस्मात् धातोः विहितयोः निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः इडागमस्य नित्यत्वार्थमिदं सूत्रं प्रवर्तते. निरकुशोः निष्ठायाम् इडागमः भवति. सरलमस्ति. Now that we have that ordering of the sutras, it will be very easy to understand. Nishkushitaha, nishkushitavan. So here it's typing mistake. It should be nishkushitaha. I'll change this later on. Nishkushitaha, nishkushitavan, idagranam nityartham. Kimuchyate itra anena. What he is saying is that you are already in the idagama prakaranam. There is already an id which is coming all the way from the top. So ned vashikruti ityatra id iti asti. Tasya agre anuvrittihi bhavitum arhati. अस्यां स्थितौ पुनः अत्र इट् निष्ठायाम् इति इट् शब्दः किमर्थं प्रयुक्तः अस्ति इति प्रश्ने कृते अयम् इड् निर्देशः एतत् इड् ग्रहणं नित्यार्थम् अस्ति. नित्यार्थम् इत्युक्ते कः अर्थः? आरम्भो हि यस्य विभाषा इत्यस्य बाधकः अन्यथा हि विकल्पार्थम् एव स्यात्. So if you just say nirah kushah and if you after that only say nisthayam, it will simply mean that the idagama vikalpa also gets carried to the nishtha. Pretty obvious, right? You say swarati suti suyati dhuyo dito va radhadibhyascha nirah kushah nisthayam. If you just say nisthayam, the concept of idagama vikalpa will get carried ahead and it will say that in case of nishtha also you get an idagama vikalpa. But you don't want a vikalpa, you want a compulsory idagama vidhanam, and therefore he had to write separate it over there, telling us that atra vikalpena it na bhavati, nityam it bhavati. That's what Kashika is saying. Id grahanam nityartham arambhaha hi. इससे सूत्र से निर्माणमेव यस्य विभाषा इत्यस्य बाधनार्थं क्रियते. यस्य विभाषा इत्यनेन इडागमः निषिध्यते तद् बाधित्वा इडागमस्य नित्यार्थं इण्यविष्ठायाम् इति सूत्रं प्रवर्तते. अन्यथा हि इड् इत्यस्य अनुपस्थितौ विकल्पार्थम् एव स्यात्. कौमुदी अपि सरलं. निरः कुशोः निष्ठायाः इट् स्यात् यस्य विभाषा इति निषेधे प्राप्ते पुनर्विधिः निष्कुशितः इति अत्र स्पष्टमेव अस्ति. Second, the immediately next one over here, sorry, this is done. The next one is vasati kshudhoho it. So we are now going to take the next three ones. Vasati kshudhoho it, anchehe pujayam, lubho vimohane. The next three are actually in this green color in set one. Simple again. Vasati kshudhoho it. Vasa nivase iti dhatu asti, to stay. Vasa dhatu तथा क्षुध to be hungry. क्षुध धातुः एतयोः विहितस्य निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य इडागमः भवति. Sutras are actually very simple. All the sutras in this section are actually very simple. It's sheer volume of the sutras that collapses the whole equation. So vasati kshudhoho it, vasa nivase plus kta, it becomes ushita. How does vasa become usha? That's not under the discussion right now. All that we have to worry about, all that we have to understand is tatra idagamah krita, tatra I iti idagamah kritah asti. So vasa plus kta becomes ushita, kshudha plus kta becomes kshudhita, vasati kshudhoho ita. That's the second sutram. Vasanivase tatha kshudha etau anitau dhatu. Both of these are anit dhatus. Therefore, for both of them, there is no prasakti of the idagama, but we would like to have the idagama. Therefore, their specific mention is done in this sutram. Etau dvau anitau dhatu, tathapi etabhyam vihitayoho nishtha pratyayoho nityam idagama ishyate, tadartham cha idam sutram pravartate. Vasati kshudhoho ita, vasatehe kshudhehe cha ktvanishtayoho idagamah bhavati. So we will come back to this sutra once again when we talk about the ktva pratyaya all the way in sheet number 12, last sheet. For now, let's concentrate on the nishtha pratyayas. Vasatehe kshudhehe cha ktvanishtayoho idagamah bhavati. Ushritva, that's the kstvanta rupam. Ushrita ushitavan, kshudhita kshudhitavan iti atra udaharanani dattani santi. Now, if you look at the dhatu patha, let's actually go to the dhatu patha and look at the vasa dhatu in this dhatu patha over here. You can see that there are two vasa dhatus in the dhatu patha. There is vasa nivase, which is in the bhwadi gana, and there is vasa achhadane, which is in the adadi gana. Out of these two dhatus, the vasa achhadane of adadi gana is already set. Because this is set and because it is not under those special conditions like ugit or adit or idit, it's not like that. And therefore, obviously, vasa achhadane ityasmat vihitasya nishtha pratyasya tadrishaha api idagamaha bhavitum arhati. Somebody is pointing, there are a few more vasa dhatus over here, but they are different because this vasa is actually vasu, which is a different dhatu, and this fourth vasa is actually for the 10th gana, which anyway gets a niche, and once it gets a niche, it becomes anikach, and therefore idagama question does not come. The question of idagama is only for ekach. As soon as it becomes anikach, it will automatically get idagama by ardha dhatuka sedvaladehe, because it automatically becomes set. So the comparison is specifically between the vasa and vasa, which is of adadi gana and which is of bhwadi gana. Out of that, vasa achhadani is anyway set, so the current discussion is limited to vasa nivase, which is anit dhatu. That's what Kashika is also explaining. Vasati iti vikaranaha nirdesharthaha eva. The vikarana pratyaya used over here, it's vasati. It actually is used for the particular dhatu of the bhwadi gana. Vaste tu udattatvad eva ita bhavitavyam. Vastehe ityukte adadiganasya vasadhatuः यः अस्ति सः उदात्तः अस्ति इत्युक्ते तस्मिन् विद्यमानः इत्सम्यक् भिन्नः स्वरः उदात्तः अस्ति, अतः अयं धातुः सेट् अस्ति, अतः ita bhavitavyam eva. For the adadigana vasa dhatu, anyway you will have the idagama. The discussion is for the vasa dhatu which is in the bhadigana. That's why and explicitly vikarana saha nirdeshaha atra bhadiganasya vasa dhatoho eva chintanam kriyate. Punarekavaram atra vasati kshudhoho itta. So again he calls that particular itta. If you look at that, if you look at the sutram over here, klishatva nishtayoho pungascha and so on is actually a vikalpa. So again, in order to cancel out that vikalpa and get back the nityatva, he uses the word itta. Exactly like what happened in the previous case. He wanted to get out of the vikalpa and therefore he used the word itta. Similarly, now he wants to get out of the vikalpa and write the nitya vidhana. अतः अत्र इडागमस्य निर्देशः इट शब्दस्य निर्देशः कृतः अस्ति पुनः इडग्रहणं नित्यार्थम्. कौमुद्यामपि सरलमेव आभ्यां क्त्वा निष्ठयोः नित्यम् इट स्यात् उषितः क्षुधितः इति अत्र उदाहरणं दत्तमस्ति. अग्रे गच्छामः तृतीयं सूत्रं. So set one, third sutram over here. Anchehe pujayam. Saralameva sutramasti. So all sutras, as I mentioned, are very easy. Anch iti gati pujanayoho iti dhatu. This dhatu comes in two different flavors. Gati, to go, and pujana, to pray or to pay the respect. we know that this particular dhatu is a typical dhatu which behaves differently when it comes to gati and when it comes to pujana. So पूर्वमपि अस्मिन् विषये अस्माभिः दृष्टमासीत् ऋत्विक् दध्रुक् स्रग् गुष्निक् अंचु युजि कृञ्चाञ्च. So at that time also I have talked about this particular dhatu, ancha dhatu. It has two different meanings, ancha gatau and ancha pujayam, and slightly different behavior is seen even in the subanta prakriya for this particular dhatu. Same thread is being extended over here. Ancha dhatu asti pujayam atra अस्य प्रयोगः भवति चेत् निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य इडागमः भवति. So अंच plus kt, this should be hraswa ukara. अंच plus kt is अंचित इडागमः भवति. गति इति अर्थः अस्ति. अंच गतौ इति धातुः प्रयुज्यते चेत् तु इडागमः न भवति. So that's the next sutram over here. अंच गति पूजनयोः इति सेट उदित धातु. Now look at this. This dhatu is actually udit. Therefore, the ktva pratyaya undergoes a vikalpa, and therefore nishtha pratyaya undergoes an in nishedha because of yasya vibhasha. So asmat vihitasya ktva pratyasya udito va ityanena vikalpena idagamah bhavati, atah asmat vihitayoho nishtha pratyayoho yasya vibhasha iti idagamah nishidhyate. Now both these things he wants to change. For the ktva pratyaya, the idagama was optional, he wants to make it compulsory. For nishtha pratyaya, the idagama was not happening altogether, he wants to make it compulsory. And therefore he combines that whole thing into a single sutram, ktva nishthayoho idagamah bhavati. Ancha dhatoho pujayam asmin arthe ktva nishthayoho idagamah bhavati. Udito va iti ktva pratyasya vikalpaha tatra praptaha निष्ठायां तु यस्य विभाषा इति प्रतिषेधः प्राप्तः उभयोः बाधनार्थम् इदं प्रारब्धम्. And only specifically for the ancha pujayam, ancha gatau iti asti chet aktam ityeva rupam siddhyati. So how does that cha become ka and all that is a further down the line, that story will be told later on. For now, just observe the difference of having an idagama versus not having an idagama. Anchita versus akta. Udaktam udakam kupat. The water has been pulled out of the well. Udaktam udakam kupat udhrutam ityartha. Pujarthat anchehe tvanishtayoho itasyat anchitaha iti pujayam rupam siddhyati gatautu aktaha iti rupam siddhyati. So that's the third sutram, anchehe pujayam. Finally, the fourth sutram in this entire set one, the last one, we only have 4 sutras in the green color. So the fourth sutram in this green section, nityam idagamah iti atra prakaranam prachalat asti. Antimam sutram lubho vimohane. Lubha iti dhatuh asti. Asmad dhatoho vimohanam iti arthah asti chet tatra nishtha pratyasya idagamah bhavati. Lubha dhatu comes in multiple flavors. So if you actually go to the dhatu patha and type over here lubha, you say lubha gardhye. Gardhya is to be greedy, to desire more than what you are entitled on. So that's gardhya. And vimohana is basically to confuse, to tempt, to somehow get attracted or whatever. So vimohana, so to confuse written over here actually, to be confused, to lose senses, to act weird. So that's vimohana. One is of the divadigana, other is of the tudadigana. Eteshu lubha vimohane ityasmin arthe. So both of these are set dhatus. Lubha vimohane ayam yaha dhatu asti. Tasya vishay kim bhavati pashyamah. If you go to this particular sutram 7 to 48, look at this sutram over here. Tisha lubha risha risha. So takaradi pratyasya upasthitau lubha iti dhatuhu vastutah wait asti. Even if the lubha dhatu in the dhatu patha is a set dhatu, takaradi pratyasya upasthitau lubha iti dhatuhu wait dhatuhu asti. Idagama vikalpaha bhavati, and as soon as it becomes a wait dhatu, yasya vibhasha will block the idagama for nishtha pratyas. So nishtha pratyasya vishaye lubha ityasya idagama nishidhyate. That idagama he wants to bring back, but only for vimohane, not for gardhye. and therefore he writes the sutram lubho vimohane. So lubho vimohane tudadihi iti vastutastu set dhatuhu अस्मात् विहितानां तकारादिकित् प्रत्ययानां तीशसः लुभरुषरिषः इत्यनेन विकल्पेन इडागमः विधीयते अतः निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः यस्य विभाषा इति इडागम निषेधः भवति. So the idagama nishedha is for both the lubha dhatus, lubha vimohane as well as lubha gardhye, out of which for the vimohana dhatu he wants to bring back the idagama compulsorily. Ata idam sutram lubho vimohane. Lubha vimohane arthe vartamanat त्वानिष्ठयोः इडागमः भवति. Lubhitva lobhitva. How the lu becomes lo and so on, we'll keep it aside for now. Observe the idagama. Lubhitva lobhitva. So vilubhitaha keshaha, vilubhitaha simantaha, vilubhitani padani. So the hairs are confusing. So hairs of an apsara or whatever, or simanta, or the footprints, or the way a person is walking, foot marks, all those are tempting, all those are confusing, all those are attractive, and so on. Vimohanam akulikaranam. He actually gives the meaning. Vimohanam akulikaranam tatra tvayam tishasah lubharusharishah iti vikalpah. So takaradikit pratyay means tva ityasya vishay tatra vikalpah bhavati. अतः निष्ठायां यस्य विभाषा इति प्रतिषेधः. विमोहने इति किं? तत्र द्वितीयः अर्थः गार्ध्ये इति अर्थः अस्ति चेत् इडागमः निषिध्यते एव. So तीशसः लुभरुषरिषः is actually going to block the idagama for both of them. In the sense तीशसः लुभरुषरिषः along with yasya vibhasha together are going to block the idagama for both the lubha dhatus. Out of the two, one of them gets back its own idagama by lubho vimohane, other does not get the idagama. So vimohane iti kim? Lubdhaha vrusalaha shitena piditaha. It's written over here. Shitena piditaha iti arthaha. And he gives some more examples of twa, so lubdhva, lubhitva, lobhitva, and so on. Gardhye yatha praptameva bhavati. So lubdha in sense of gardhya does not get the idagama. In sense of vimohana, it gets back the idagama. So lubhaha tvanishthayo, this is typing mistake. Lubhaha tvanishthayo nityam it syat natu gardhye, lubhitaha gardhye tu lubdhaha. Iti saralaha artha. So that completes the section number 1. So as I mentioned, today's goal is to complete section number 1 and section number 2. That's it. So set number 1 ityatra nityam idagamah tatra kevalam chatvari sutrani idnisthayam ityanena nira plus kusha vasati kshudoho ita ityanena vasa tatha ksudha anchehe pujayam ityanena ancha dhatuhu विशिष्टे अर्थे पूजायाम इत्यस्मिन् अर्थे अन्ते च लुभ विमोहने इत्यनेन लुभ धातुः विमोहनम इत्यस्मिन् अर्थे. So this is basically the first set where the idagama is brought back compulsorily. Now the second group, nishtha pratyayo vaikalpikaha idagamaha. In the second set, we are going to look at the sutras where the nishtha pratyaya will get an optional idagama. Now, when we say it is optional idagama, it can be both ways. There could be original sutra which is giving a compulsory idagama, and a second sutra will make it optional. That is also acceptable. Or there could be a sutram which is completely blocking the idagama, and a new sutram on the top of it brings back the idagama optionally. So prapta as well as aprapta, either way, eventually we would like to have it as a vibhasha. So both of these things are combined over here. Vaikalpikaha idagamaha ityukte purvam idagamaha na praptaha idanim vikalpena labhyate. Nochit vaikalpikaha idagama nishedhaha purvam idagamaha sampurna rupena nishiddha idanim tasya vaikalpikaha nishedha krutah asti. Either way, the sutras are being collected in this second set. Let's take a quick look at the list of sutras. So we have the first important sutram that we studied yesterday. We would like to take a detailed look at it today again. Vibhasha bhavadi karmano. Vibhasha bhavadi karmano, as the name itself indicates, it is vibhasha. It brings back the idagama optionally. So it belongs to set number 2. Vaikalpika idagama. Tatra prathamam sutram asti vibhasha bhavadi karmano. Then there are 2 sutras over here. Rushyamatvara sanghusha swanam and Rusher Lomasu. You can see the description over here. Nishtha pratyasya vaikalpikah idagama nishedha. Nishtha pratyasya vaikalpikah idagama nishedha. A little bit before is also Nishtha pratyasya vaikalpika idagama nishedha, but it is explicitly a nipatana. So we group it into a separate group and not clutter in the set 2 over here. So we are going to keep nipatanas aside for now. Let's actually take the sutras that have some crux of prakriya in them. So nishtha pratyasya vaikalpikah idagama nishedha, rushyamatvara sanghusha swanam and rusher lomasu. So these 2 sutras, and a little bit below there are 2 more sutras. We have klishaktva nishthayoho. Again nishtha pratyasya idagama vikalpaha and pungascha nishtha pratyasya idagama vikalpaha. So these are 5 sutras that we will discuss in today's class, and that's it. Even if we have time, I don't want to jump on the set 3 because I don't want to pump in too many sutras in one class. All these are new sutras. We need time to revise them. Having said that, there is a lot of material over here, so I don't think the class will end early. Anyway, nishtha pratyayoho vaikalpikaha idagama nishedha तत्र प्रथमं सूत्रं विभाषाभावादिकर्मणोः यस्तनवर्गे अपि दृष्टमस्ति, परन्तु अस्मिन् सूत्रे वार्तिकद्वयं द्वे वार्तिके विद्येते, एतयोः इदानीम् अध्ययनं कुर्मः. सो भावे आदिकर्मणि च आदितः धातोः विभाषानिष्ठायाम् इडागमः न भवति. What is the story going on over here? The previous sutram is aditascha, 7 to 16 is aditascha. This sutram blocks the idagama for all the dhatus which have a as its samyaka in them. Imida, itrusha, itvara. So if there is an its samyaka akara, the nishtha pratyayas don't get an idagama. Now that nishedha has been made optional, bhave tatra pratyaya vihita asti, no chet adi karmani pratyaya vihita asti. Remember, a pratyaya can be attached in multiple ways. You can attach it in bhave, kartari, karmani, adhikarane, kalasamanye, adikarmani, and so on. Vartamane, bhute, blah, blah, blah. So you have multiple different ways. Out of which, if a usage can be tagged under the title of bhave, you don't really care about other dimensions. It can be, any kala, but it has to be bhave. Or if the usage can be tagged under the title of adikarmani, in either of the cases, the nishtha pratyaya will optionally get an idagama. So, nishtha pratyasya vikalpena idagama bhavati. Bhave adikarmani cha aditah dhatoho nisthayam idagama vibhashana bhavati is what he is saying over here. So there is a question here, why are they saying nishedha over here? It's just a style. I mean, earlier he has given a nishedha compulsorily, so he is now giving it optionally. So the style of writing is vibhasha nishedha asti, vibhasha idagama na bhavati. He could have said it in other way also, that's not an issue. So minnam anena meditam anena. So mida iti dhatu asti, tatra bhave kta pratyaya vidhiyate chet minnam, to become fat or to swell, to blow, or meditam. Praminnaha and prameditaha are the adikarmani usages. Praminnaha and prameditaha. So basically, this is one sutra which we have seen yesterday. Tatra adikarmani tatha bhave the idagama vikalpena bhavati. इदानीम् अत्र अस्मिन् सूत्रे वार्तिकद्वयम् उच्यते, तत् क्रमेण पश्यामः. तत्र प्रथमं वार्तिकम् अस्ति सौनागाः कर्मणि निष्ठायां शकेः इटमिच्छन्ति विकल्पेन. The first vartikam over here, saunagaha. This is a typing mistake over here. It is saunagaha. So sunaga was a certain vaiyakarana. The followers of sunaga, tasya shishyaha, tasya chhatraha, saunagaha iti namna jnayante. So saunagaha, basically Saunaga Rishi taught this to them. And what did Saunaga Rishi teach them? He told them that there is a specific dhatu called shaka. So shaka iti dhatu asti. For this dhatu, कर्मणि अर्थे अपि विकल्पेन इडागमः भवति. Understand this. Here vibhasha bhavadi karmanoho is giving a vikalpa. It is giving a vikalpa for whom? For bhave and for adi karmani. There is no discussion of karmani going on over here. But what this Saunaga Rishi says, or this Vaiyakarana says, Saunagaha कर्मणि निष्ठायाम शकेः इटमिच्छन्ति. शक धातु, which is ironically akarmaka dhatu, this dhatu gets an idagama when used in the nishtha of this dhatu gets an idagama when used in the karmani sense. Now how can an akarmaka dhatu be used in the karmani sense? We will talk about it towards the end of our course when we go to sheet number probably 11 or 12, I think. But for now, let's understand that if you use a tuman pratyaya over here, so for example, kartum shaknoti, then the kru dhatu gets some karma over here. So devadattaha ghatam kartum shaknoti. That particular karma can be used on the shaka dhatu as well. So shaka as such is akarmaka. Devadattah shaknoti, devadattah na shaknoti. Tatra akarma padam nasti. Parantu तत्र तुमन प्रत्ययः प्रयुज्यते. अन्यस्मिन् धातौ तुमन प्रत्ययः प्रयुज्यते. यथा कर्तुं शक्नोति, गन्तुं शक्नोति, द्रष्टुं शक्नोति. तत्र तस्य अन्य धातोः यत् कर्मपदं तस्य आधारेण अत्र कर्मत्वं दत्तमस्ति. सो यदि शक धातुः अकर्मकः तथापि तुमुनन्तवाच्य क्रियाविशेषणत्वेन सकर्मकः भवति. सो घटः कर्तुं at this point in time, ghataha kartum shaknoti. So this ghata now becomes the ghatam kartum shaknoti. This ghata now becomes the karma over here. That karma makes the shaka dhatu put in the karmani sense. So karmani nisthayam ityukte, a nishtha pratyay which is used along with the karma pada. You treat this ghata as if it is a karma pada, and therefore for the shaka dhatu, which is otherwise an anitya dhatu, you will get an idagama optionally. So karmani vihitat nishtha pratyayat keshanchana matena, some group of scholars give an optional ita. So shakitaha and shaktaha, both of these forms are acceptable according to the lineage of Sunaga and his followers. And because he explicitly says karmani, the conclusion is that bhave idagama na bhavati. So anyway the dhatu is anita, it will anyway not have an idagama. The nishtha pratyas will not have an idagama. The karmani idagama is given as an option. Bhave atra vartike kimapi noktam asti, atha bhave tu idagama na bhavati. So bhave tu nityam idagamasya abhavah eva shaktam anena iti atra artha prayogah siddhyati. So that is the first vartika. Shakitaha ghataha kartum, shaktaha ghataha kartum, bhave na bhavatyeva. That also I explained. The next vartikam is asyatehe bhave adi karmani cha na bhavatyeva. So again, it's not very clear whether it is for Saunagas or somebody else, but this is again optionally only. So keshanchana matena, the commentaries make it clear, keshanchana matena. So both these vartikas are completely optional. Asyatehe bhave, so asukshepane iti dhatuh asti, to throw iti atra dhatuh, asmat dhatuh, bhave arthe vihitat nishtha pratyayat keshanchana matena it bhavati. Asyatehe bhave adi karmani na bhavati. So karmani tatha adi karmani. Karmani is also not mentioned over here. So karmani na bhavati, adi karmani na bhavati, bhave tu avashyam bhavati. So asitam anena iti astaha kandaha. Asta iti bhave iti कर्मणि प्रयोगः अस्ति, अतः अत्र इडागमः न क्रियते, परन्तु असितम् अत्र भावे प्रयोगः अस्ति, अतः अत्र इडागमः कृतः अस्ति. So eventually this looks like a far-fetched going in unnecessary details, is again not given by Sutrakara or by any specific Bhashyakara, or even Vartikakara does not say it compulsorily. He is just presenting somebody's views. Saunagaha karmani nisthayam shakehe itamichanti, and probably same set of people or some other set of people, bhave na bhavatyeva, asya tehe bhave, adikarmane cha na bhavatyeva, and so on are being presented over here. So let's go back to our sheet. I have given all these examples over here. So vibhasha bhavadikarmanoh, the base use case mid dhatu asti bhave nochit adikarmani medita or minna. Only bhave should be there because I have the adikarmani on the next line. I'll clean this up today later on. So mida plus bhavekta will be medita or minna. Pra plus mida plus adikarmani. Here it should be only adikarmani. Pra plus mida plus adikarmanikta would be pramedita or praminna. So these are the actual examples of vibhasha bhavadikarmana. And then you have 4 more examples which are only by because of for certain scholars. So saunagana mamatena kim bhavati, shak dhatuh asti chet karmani idagamah bhavati, bhave idagamah na bhavati. अन्येषां mateena kim bhavati, as dhatuh asti chet bhave idagamah bhavati, कर्मणि उत आदिकर्मणि इडागमः न भवति. अग्रे गच्छामः. Somebody is asking, is asta over here same as suryasta? I don't think so. This is a different dhatu. Asa kshepane iti dhatuh asti. I don't often recollect if it's possible to derive it in the same way, but most likely not. Must be a different dhatu. Astu, agre gacchamaha. So that's the first dhatu over here, vibhasha bhavadikarmanoh. Let's go to the next one. Rushamatvara sanghusha swanam. Multiple dhatus are there. Again, sutra is very simple. Rushi is the first dhatu. So look at the list of dhatus. Rushi, ama, tvara, sanghusha, and aswada. Combine this together. Rushi, ama, tvara, sanghusha, and aswana. 5 dhatus are there over here. Rusha himsayam ityasmat dhatoh kta pratyaya vidhiyate chet vikalpena idagam nishedha bhavati. So both forms are there, rushita or rushta. Ama plus kta, amita or anta. Tvara plus kta, tvarita or turna. There is an idagama, there is no idagama. Both cases are possible. Vaikalpikaha idagama nishedha asti. I'll explain why each of these dhatus it matters and so on. I'll explain a little bit details on the slide deck. Let's understand the examples first. Sama plus ghusha becomes sanghushita or sanghushta. And the final is aswada plus kta. A plus swada plus kta. Aswanita and aswanta. These are 5 different examples given in this particular sutram. Let's actually take a look at why each of them really matters. So let's start with the first one, Rusha Himsayam. It occurs in Bhvadigana as well as Divadigana. Rusha Himsayam is actually a set dhatu. So therefore, the idagama should ideally happen. But if you look at this Tisha sutram over here, where did it go? It's written over here 7-48. If you look at this sutram over here, Tisha Saha Lubha Rusha Rishaha. So you can see Rusha dhatu sitting over here, which means that takaradi pratyayasya idagama vikalpaha bhavati, which means that nisthayam idagama nishedha bhavati. So Rusha iti dhatuhu et asmat vihitasya nochet dhatu dvayam asti atah etayoho vihitanam takaradikit pratyayanam tisha saha lubharusha rishaha ityanena vikalpena idagama vidhiyate atah nishtha pratyoho idagama nishedha prapnoti asyam sthitau अस्मात् विहितयोः निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः विकल्पेन इडागम विधानार्थं नोचेत् विकल्पेनैव निषेधार्थं रुषित इदं सूत्रं क्रियते येन रुषित रुष्ट एतौ द्वौ अपि शब्दौ भवतः. So for the rusha dhatu you have a compulsory idagama inhibition. We would like to make it only optional and therefore the rusha dhatu is included in this particular sutram. So we need to understand, in the same way we need to understand why each of the dhatus is present in this particular sutram. Rusha is present is using an ik nirdesha as rushi. The next one is ama dhatu. Amagatyadishu, multiple meanings are there. इति अत्र सेट् धातुः अस्ति। अयं सेट् धातुः, अतः अस्मात् विहितस्य निष्ठाप्रत्ययस्य नित्यम् इडागमः भवति। एतादृशः इडागमः वस्तुतः विकल्प्यते, अतः अत्र अस्य धातोः अस्मिन् सूत्रे ग्रहणं कृतमस्ति। सो अस्मात् वितयो निष्ठाप्रत्ययो नित्यमिडागमे प्राप्ते तस्य वैकल्पिकः निषेधः क्रियते। अनेन अमित तथा आन्त द्वावपि शब्दौ साधुत्वं प्राप्नुयाताम्, अतः अमधातुः अस्मिन् सूत्रे स्थापितः अस्ति। The third dhatu is yitvara sambhrame. It is an adita dhatu. Because it is adita, if you keep the bhavadi karmana cases aside, in other cases aditasya ittenena asya dhatoho अस्मात् धातोः विहितस्य निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य इड् निषेधः भवति, परन्तु अत्र इडागमः इष्यते, विकल्पेन इष्यते, अतः अत्र अस्य धातोः अस्मिन् सूत्रे ग्रहणं कृतमस्ति. So what is happening? For hitvara dhatu, aditasya will permanently cause an idagama nishedha. We want that idagama nishedha to be only optional. Therefore, we have this dhatu in this sutram. The next one is ghushir avishabdane. Avishabdane is to make some sound. So ghushir avishabdane iti set dhatu asti. So vastutah asmat dhatoho vihitasya nishtha pratyasya idagamah bhavet. Parantu तत्र घुष धातोः विशिष्ट रूपेण भिन्नं सूत्रं कृतमस्ति. घुषिः अविशब्दने. We will see this sutram sometimes towards the next class. So घुषिः अविशब्दने. This sutram, it blocks the idagama for the ghusha dhatu, the nishtha pratyayas of the ghusha dhatu completely. Let's understand this once again. वस्तुतस्तु घुष इति धातुः सेट् अस्ति, अतः अस्मात् विहितस्य निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य इडागमः भवेत्, परन्तु तत्र सः इडागमः न इष्यते, अतः अत्र घुष धातोः विषये विशिष्टरूपेण सूत्रं निर्मितम् अस्ति. घुषिरविशब्दने इत्यनेन इडागमस्य निषेधः नित्यम् उच्यते. That is specific to a general, or that is related to the general ghusha dhatu. So for a general ghusha dhatu, idagama is being completely blocked. But when sama upasarga comes over there, sama plus ghusha ityasya vishaye ghushiravishabdane ityanena vaikalpike idagame ghushiravishabdane ityanena nityam idagama nishedhe prapte तस्य विकल्पार्थम अस्य संघुष धातोः अत्र अस्मिन् सूत्रे ग्रहणं कृतमस्ति. So sam plus ghush in this particular sutram is added because ghush in general will never get an idagama. That particular idagama has to be optionally added. So you can take a look at it both ways. You can either say given a nishedha, the nishedha is being relaxed. So vikalpena nishedha bhavati, ataha anyasmin pakshe idagamah bhavati. Or you can take a look at it in a different way. Nityam idagamah vihitah asti, tasya nishedha bhavati. So in both of these cases, look at over here. Nityam idagame prapte tasya vaikalpikah nishedha kriyate. Somebody is asking over here if it is a nityam idagama vikalpa, vaikalpika nishedha katham uktah asti. So it's a way of writing. You have idagama happening compulsorily, it is being blocked optionally, or idagama is not happening at all. The lack of idagama is made optional. So either way you can take a look at it. You basically, what we want to do is, we are at one of the two extremes. We are at a place where idagama is 100%, or we are at a place where idagama is 0%. We have to pull the dhatu from either ends to the center, where it is 50% idagama chance and 50% no idagama chance. So whether you say purna nishedha asti vikalpena bhavati, no chet you say purna nishedha asti saha nishedha vikalpyate, it's basically the game of the language. Eventually you bring it to the center from either of the ends. That's the whole bottom line over here. So घुष धातोः विषये वस्तुतः अयं सेट् धातुः घुषिरविशब्दने इत्यनेन इडागम निषेधः नित्यं भवति. Somebody is asking over here, for घुषिरविशब्दने, if the idagama is compulsorily blocked for all cases, why is this dhatu even a set dhatu? The answer is because ghush can have multiple meanings. Only for the avishabdane case all this idagama nishedha is happening. Other cases, the setva will help us to decide that there will be idagama. So ghush dhatoho vishaye, I don't know if there are all these meanings are written over here, maybe they are not, but in general dhatunam bahavaha arthaha santi. Sorry. Dhatunam bahavaha arthaha santi. So you have avishabdane and there might be a few more. So dhatunam bahavaha arthaha santi, anekarthaha dhatavaha iti uchyate. तत्र कश्चन एकः अर्थः अविशब्दने तस्य अर्थस्य विषये अत्र इडागमस्य निषेधः कृतः अस्ति। अस्मिन् निषेधे कृते पुनरेकवारं सम उपसर्गः अस्ति चेत् तत्र this has to be sama with a half not full. So sama उपसर्गः अस्ति चेत् तत्र पुनः विकल्पेन इडागमः विधीयते येन संघुष्ट इति शब्दौ साधुत्वं प्राप्नुतः. The last category over here, if you can see, swada. So the last category over here is a swada dhatu. Swada aswadane, to taste or to have a choice for. Iti set dhatuhu. Asmad dhatoho vihitayoho nishtha pratyayoho nityam idagame prapte. Ashwada ityasya vishaye tasya vaikalpikah nishedha ishyate. A plus shwada. So shwada will anyway get a nitya idagama. When a upasarga is used over here, the idagama becomes optional. Aswanita nochet aswanta iti shabdau sadhutvam prapnuyatam. So you get aswanita and aswanta as both acceptable forms over here. Somebody is saying that we do not need the category of idagama vidhanam vikalpa. That is correct. That is the reason I just titled it in. There is no separate category for idagama vidhanam vikalpa or anything. I just have that probably an elaborative title over here, vikalpena idagama or vikalpena idagama nishedha. And the reason I gave this title over here is because if you remember yesterday's class, I have divided the idagama section into two parts. The top part was nishedha and the lower part was idagama vidhanam. And in that thing, further division was done: optional nishedha or compulsory nishedha, and optional idagama or compulsory idagama. Whether it is optional nishedha or whether it is optional bringing back, eventual result is the same. As I mentioned, don't overthink on this point. You're either bringing it from 0 to 50 or you're bringing it from 100 to 50. Eventually you're bringing over here, depending on where the nishedha sutra is placed. Is it placed in the topmost section where the nishedhas are being discussed, or is it depending on where the vikalpa sutra is placed? Let me rephrase that. Depending on where the vikalpa sutra is placed, if it is placed in the top section where the nishedha is happening, we will rephrase the vikalpa in term, or we'll phrase the vikalpa in terms of nishedha. If the vikalpa sutra is placed in the bottom part where the idagama is being told, we will phrase the vikalpa in terms of the idagama. So the phrasing purely depends on where that sutra is placed, or how convenient or how natural it is to interpret that. Eventually you can rewrite it in the way you want, as long as you say that tatra idagamaha vikalpena bhavati is the bottom line over here. So let's not overthink on this particular point. Okay, so these are the 5 dhatus over here. Let's take a quick look at the commentaries. Va iti vartate. So rusha matvala sanghusha. Let me actually take another question over here. So whether to use idagama or not, is it dependent on the style of writing? So whether to use idagama or not is optional, is completely left up to you as far as the grammar is concerned. So grammar says yatra yatra idagamaha vikalpyate iti vyakarana shastrena uchyate. Tatra tatra bhavan ichhati chet idagama sahitam rupam prayoktum shaknoti, no chet idagama rahitam rupam prayoktum shaknoti. Now, style of writing and all that, all these things come when you are actually writing poetry. So when you're writing poetry, you have to think of the chandas, you have to think of the number of letters, laghu, guru, and so on. And at that particular point in time, you don't really have a choice. So for example, if you need 3 characters, probably amita is a good fit. If you need 2 characters, probably anta is a good fit. So it depends on the number of characters and other constraints which are outside the domain of Vyakarana Shastram. So while writing, if you're writing answers to the exercises, you can write whatever you want. Well, if you're using these words in writing poetry, you should think about other additional advanced stuff like chandas or whatever alankara and so on. Those are not in the control of Vyakarana Shastram. So as far as Vyakarana Shastram is concerned, it's completely up to you. You can use the word ant or you can use the word amit. Both of them are acceptable. So रुष्यमत्वर संघुषास्वनाम झटिति गच्छामः किंचित शास्त्र चर्चा काचित् शास्त्र चर्चा अपि अग्रे अस्ति वा इति वर्तते ऋषि अमत्वर संघुष आस्वन इत्येतेषां निष्ठायाम् इडागमः विकल्पेन न भवति रुष्टः रुषितः तीशसः लुभरुष ऋष इति विकल्प विधानात् यस्य विभाषा इति विप्रतिषेध इति प्रतिषेधे प्राप्ते विकल्पार्थम् इदं वचनम् अम धातुः अस्ति अभ्यन्तः अभ्यमितः, so he basically adds an abhi upasarga over here. त्वर धातुः अस्ति तूर्णः त्वरितः आदितः इति प्रतिषेधे प्राप्ते वचनम gives an example of संघुष संघुष्टौ पादौ, feet making noise, संघुषितौ पादौ, so घुष्ट versus घुषित, संघुष्टं वाक्यमाह संघुषितं वाक्यमाह, संघुष्टौ दम्यौ संघुषितौ दम्यौ. Damya is a young calf, so basically a calf which is, or whatever, a small young bull which is not yet ready to be put to a cart for pulling. So sangushtah damyah sangushtau damyau sangushtau damyau and so on. So sampurvasya ghushehe avishabdane api paratvad ayam vikalpah bhavati. So ghusha dhatuh avishabdane tatra idagam nishedha bhavati parantu paratvad tad badhitva सम उपसर्गः तत्र अस्ति चेत् विकल्पः भवति. आस्वनः आस्वान्तः देवदत्तः आस्वनितः देवदत्तः. I may have made a mistake over here. Let me check if there is a swana dhatu. I was saying swada dhatu. I don't know from where did I read that. So probably this is about the swana dhatu. Let me go back, check commentaries. I think I have been writing swada dhatu over here. I think this probably is a swana dhatu. I need to confirm this. Anyway, let's take a look at the commentaries, the way it's written. So aswantaha devadattaha aswanitaha devadattaha. So swanita and swanta most likely it is swana dhatu and not swada. I'll fix this. Aswantam manaha aswanitam manaha. Ang purvasya swanehe manobidhane api paratvadayam vikalpaha shubdha swanta iti nipatanam badhate. Let's actually ignore this part, not very important, but what he's saying is in this sutram 7 to 18, there is a swant shabd over here, which is used in the representation of a mana. So this is basically yatha sankhyam, a bunch of nipatanas are given in certain meanings. So kshubdha is used in the meaning of mantha and swanta is used in the meaning of mana. So he says, even for that particular pair, swanta and mana, even if there is a particular nipatanam, which only gives the form as swanta, you can still use swanita when you have ang upasarga over there. So aswantam manaha aswanitam manaha. So ang upasarga asti chet asyeva sutrasya prayogaha karaniyah anya sutrasya prayogaha na karaniyah iti atra ashayah asti. So you can ignore this particular last line. It basically says what I discussed just now. Kaumudim pashamah ebhyo nisthayam idva रुषितः रुष्टः आन्तः अमितः तूर्णः त्वरितः संघुष्टः संघुषितः आस्वान्तः आस्वनितः. So understand that there was a mistake while I was explaining, some typing mistake or explanation mistake from my side. Instead of shwada, it should be swana. Small thing, I mean not big. I'll just fix it in the slide deck later on. There is an interesting line over here in the Kaumudi which I would like to spend some time on. Asya atve phalam mandam. Very interesting point over here. Let's take a look at this particular line. There is a homework question today for you to explain this particular line. Asya atve phalam mandam ityasya spashtikaranam likhata is the homework question today. Let's actually understand this. So a little background over here. Take a quick look at this sutram. Rushamattvara sangushaswanam. This particular sutram has this yi tvara dhatu over here. The question that we are going to ask is, what is the point of having this hi tvara dhatu in this particular sutram? Asmin sutre ni tvara ityasya dhatoho nirdeshasya kim prayojanam? Let's take a look at the answer right now, as we know, and then we will go to the charcha. So ni tvara is actually adit dhatu. Because it is adit dhatu, the idagama is being blocked compulsorily by aditascha. So bhave and adikarmani is a special case. It will bring the idagama optionally by vibhasha bhava adikarmanoho. That's a separate story. Keep it aside. But kta and ktavatu pratyaya are not limited to bhave and adikarmani. They can be used in karmani sense. They can be used in adhikarane sense. They can be used in kartari sense, and so on. So even if tvara dhatu is akarmaka dhatu, maybe because of upasarga it can become sakarmaka, and then in karmani sense you can use kta and ktavatu. Then you can use say adhikarane, or you can use kartari, and so on. So all these other usages are there for which that aditascha actually will block the idagama, and for those use cases we would still like to have an optional idagama, and therefore this particular yitvara verb is present in this particular sutram. So tadeva atra prarambhe likhitamasti pathamah. आचार्यः पृच्छति ऋष्यमत्वर संघुषास्वनाम अस्मिन् सूत्रे नीत्वरा धातोः निर्देशः किमर्थम्? So that's the question. Why do we have a tvara dhatu over here? Nitvara iti dhatuhu adit asti. The kid is answering, the student is answering. Nitvara dhatuhu adit asti. Aditasya ityanena asmad dhatoho vihitayoho nishtha pratyayoho idagama nishidhyate. Parantu asmad dhatoho vihitayoho nishtha pratyayoho idagama vikalpena ishyate. It's being blocked, but we would like to bring it optionally, because of which the reason being tvarita and turna are both acceptable forms. Ataha atra asmin sutre tvara dhatoh nirdesha avashyakah. Now the acharya says that hold on, there is already a sutram called vibhasha bhavadi karmanoho, and vibhasha bhavadi karmanoho is bringing the optional idagama. So acharya asks him, parantu vibhasha bhavadi karmanoho ityanena bhave tatha adi karmani id vikalpah avashyam uktah asti. And obviously, as I mentioned, the answer on the top of that, the answer to this query is that that's acceptable. But what about other cases? What about cases like karmani, kartari, adhikarane? All these cases should also need to be covered. So the student says, parantu anyatrapi ityukte karmani prayoge, kartari prayoge, adhikaranarthe. Karmani will not be applicable for standalone tvara dhatu, but probably along with upasarga it might become sakarmaka in some use cases. So I've just added it over here as a hypothetical case. So karmani prayoge, kartari prayoge, adhikarana prayoge, bhinneshu anneshu prayoge id vikalpah ishyate. And now comes the real crux of the argument over here. So understand this. What is happening? The hitvara dhatu will get an optional idagama because of vibhasha bhavadi karmano, and in for bhave and karmani, and it will also get an optional idagama because of rushyamatvara sangushasvanam. So eventually for all cases yitvara dhatu will get an option, the nishtha pratyaya will get an optional idagama. So nishtha pratyayasya idagamasya kutrapi nishedhah na bhavati, sarvatra saha vikalpyate iti atra smartavyam. Bhave नो चेत् आदिकर्म प्रयोगः अस्ति चेत् विभाषा भावादिकर्मणोः इति तत्र विकल्प्यते. अन्ये प्रयोगाः सन्ति चेत् ऋष्यमत्वर संभुषास्वनाम् इति विकल्प्यते. अतः एते अस्मात् धातोः विहितस्य निष्ठा प्रत्ययोः इडागमः न कुत्रचित् निषिध्यते. If that is the case, then what is the point of having akara as an itsamyaka in this dhatu? Because the point of having akara as itsamyaka in this dhatu was to block the idagama by aditascha. Aditascha iti sutrena idagamasya nishedhah bhavet iti karanat atra akarah itsamyakah sthapitah asti. In general, when you say nimida, nikshvida, in all these cases, the akara is present because for cases other than bhava and adikarma, there should be idagama nishedha. But what is happening over here? For cases other than bhave and adikarma, idagama is anyway made optional by rushyamatvara sangushasvanam. Therefore, sarvatra idagamasya vikalpah asti. Ataha asmin dhatau itsamyakasya akarasya na kimapi prayojanam. Because the only prayojana of itsamyaka akara is to give is to block the idagama by aditascha on the nishtha pratyas, but that's anyway not happening. Asya dhatoh vishe sarvatra idagamah vikalpyate. Ataha asmin dhatu itsamyakah akarah chintya prayojanah. If you even get rid of the akara from this dhatu completely, obviously vibhasha bhavadi karmanoh will no more act on this dhatu because it is only restricted to the aditya dhatus. But we don't need that. As soon as you get rid of akara from this dhatu completely, the tvara reference in Rushamattvara Sanghusha itself will account for all the cases. Kartari, Karmani, Bhave, Adi Karmani, Adhikarane, all the cases will be included in Rushamattvara Sanghusha, and everywhere you will get an optional idagama. Ataha, atra यित्वरा धातोः सर्वेषु अर्थेषु विहितः प्रत्ययः विकल्पेन इडागमं प्राप्नोति अस्यां स्थितौ अस्मिन् धातौ इत्सम्यक् आकारस्य प्रयोजनमेव नास्ति आदितस्य इत्यनेन इडागम निषेधस्य न कुत्रचित् प्रसङ्गः अतः अस्मिन् धातौ इत्सम्यकः आकारः चिन्त्य प्रयोजनः there is no reason of having it the prayojana the purpose of itsamyaka akara is not clear चिन्त्य प्रयोजन इदानीं स्पष्टं नास्ति तस्य स्थाने akarah bhavati chedapi varam. So you cannot get rid of that akara. You need something over there, because if you get rid of that akara completely and if you just write nitvara, then ra will start becoming itsamyaka by halantyam, which is what we don't want. So you need some swara to protect that ra over there, and the obvious choice is akara. That's what we do in, for example, likh or has or pat and so on. So you could have say itvara with an itsamyaka akara over there, which will somehow protect the repha at the end. Instead of that, he has added an akara over there. It does not have a prayojana, because the only prayojana of akara is to block the idagama. Idagama for nitvara dhatu is never being blocked. It is always being made optional thanks to the sutram rushamattvara sanghusha swanam. Atah atra तत्वबोधिन्यामुच्यते आदित्वे तु प्रयोजनं मृग्यं मृग्यम इज इदानीम् अन्वेषणं न कृतमस्ति इदानीं स्पष्टं नास्ति इति अर्थः तस्य अन्वेषणं करणीयम् इति अर्थः आदित्वे तु प्रयोजनं मृग्यम and that's what Kaumudi puts in his own style. He says asya atve phalam mandam. That's his own style of writing. The fruit or the purpose of adding an itsamyak akara in hitvara dhatu is being reduced or is not very clear. Saying phalam mandam is a figure of speech, is an idiom, is a style which just says that the result is not yet clear or the purpose is not clear. It is ill-defined. It is not very strong. So phalam strong nasti, weak asti, mandam asti iti uchyate. Tatra akarasya sthapanayaha prayojanam kim asti iti chintyam iti atra ashayah. So there is a question about this particular point in the homework. Why does Kaumudi say that akarasya prayojanam chintyam iti? Agre gacchamaha, 2 more sutras I think, and then we will stop, or 3 more sutras. Sorry, 3 more sutras. So you have Rushehe lo masu. Where did it go? So the next sutram is Rushehe lo masu. There are a few questions over here, but I want to park those because I would like to finish the planned set of sutras today. So agrimam sutram asti atra Rushehe lo masu. Saralam sutram vastutah Rush alike iti dhatuhu. Rush ityasmad dhatoho क्त प्रत्ययः क्रियते चेत् तत्र वैकल्पिकः इडागम निषेधः भवति. हृषित टू बी हैप्पी और टू गेट एक्साइटेड हृष्ट इति अत्र उभयथा प्रयोगः भवति. लेट्स लुक एट द कमेंट्री. हृष अलीके इति सेट् धातुः. दिस इज उदित धातुः. Therefore udito va will make idagama optional for tva pratyaya. Therefore it will block the idagama for nishtha pratyayas and so on. Now specifically when you are talking about the harsha, the excitement of the lom hairs, excitement of the hairs, essentially it means getting goosebumps, or say because of certain feeling the body hairs stand up because of surprise, because of shock, because of happiness, because of excitement. So in that particular situation, getting goosebumps or body hairs standing up because of excitement, because of shock, happiness, and so on, that particular expression, you can have an optional idagama. You can say rushita or you can say rushta. So lomnam harsha, loman is basically the hairs. Lomnam harsha ityasmin sandarbhe rushtam. So let's look at the prayogas. Lomabhihi rushtam, lomabhihi rushitam. केशाः हृष्टाः, keshaha, rishitaha. So it's the meaning of loma, not necessarily the word loma. Any meaning that talks about getting goosebumps resulting in hairs standing up. So rishtaha, keshaha, rishitaha, keshaha, and so on. So lomani, murdhajani, angajani, samanyena grihyante. So the hairs present on the head and the hairs present on the body, the hands, legs, and so on. General hairs appearing on body are considered over here. Samanyena grihyante. Tadvishaye cha harshe vartamanaha lomasu vartate ityuchate. So the happiness is being experienced by the person. It's being reflected on that particular hair. So that's basically the context over here. And lomasu iti kim? Why specifically for loman? Rushtaha devadattaha. If devadatta is just happy, you just say rushtaha devadattaha iti atra ashayaha. Understand this, there are two rusha dhatus. Actually, go to the dhatu pata. There are two rusha dhatus over here. You have rusha alike and rusha tushtau, out of which rusha alike is udit. Therefore, idagama nishedha, nishtha pratyahu idagama nishedha. Rusha tushtau is the normal rusha dhatu. So tatra nishtha pratyahu idagamaha bhavati. So what is happening? For the first dhatu, the idagama is being blocked permanently. For the second dhatu, idagama is compulsorily coming. For both these dhatus, if there is a context of loma, the hairs, the idagama comes optionally. That's what he says. Ubhayatra vibhasha ayam. This is prapta vibhasha for one, aprapta vibhasha for another. For rusha alike, there was absolutely no idagama. Idagama is being brought optionally. For rusha tushtau, there was a compulsory idagama. The idagama has been reduced by 50%. So it's only being made optional. So for both these dhatus, that's what he is giving. If it is not a loma, if it is some other context, then rusha alike will not get idagama. So you will get rushtaha devadattaha. Rusha tushtau will compulsorily get idagama. Rusha tushtau, this is typing mistake. Rusha tushtau will compulsory get idagama. Therefore, rushitaha. Both of these particular usages are there. And then there is a vartika which says Vismita pratighatayoho cha iti vaktavyam. So Vismita, getting surprised, or pratighatayoho, say hitting on each other. In these particular contexts also, so along with excitement, or along with the hairs standing, a few more contexts are given. Vismita pratighatayoho. Vismita is to become surprised, excited, and not necessarily directly related to hairs. And pratighatayoho, to strike on each other. So rishtaha rishitaha va devadatta, typing mistake. Rishtaha rishitaha va devadattaha vismitaha iti ashayaha. Rishtaha rishitaha va dantaha. So in the cold, the teeth are striking on each other because of shivering. That's basically pratighata. We call these teeth as rishitaha, nochet rishtaha dantaha. So to strike on each other, to hit on each other, iti artha. Rishehe nisthayam idvasyat lomasu vishaye rishtam rishitam loma visvita pratighatayoho iti vaktavyam. This is a vartika. The further more examples are given. Rishtaha, Maitraha, name of a person, Vismitaha, Pratihataha, and so on. Anyatra tu rushu alike ityatra uditvayat nisthayam idagamaha na bhavati. Rusha tushtau ityatra tu nityam idagamaha bhavati. So for rushu alike, idagama does not happen. Normal case, rusha tushtau. This is typing mistake. It should be rusha. Rusha tushtau compulsory idagamaha bhavati. Parantu ubhayatra loman इति अर्थः अस्ति. नो चेत् विस्मितः प्रतिघातः इति अर्थः अस्ति चेत् इडागमः विकल्प्यते. Two more sutras and then we will stop. The last two sutras over here, simple, very simple. Klishaktva nishthayoho and pungascha. Here there is no meaning involved. It's simply two dhatus. Klisha iti dhatuhu and pung iti dhatuhu. So klishaktva nishthayoho. Klisha dhatuhu asti chet इति निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य विकल्पेन इडागमः भवति. सो क्लिशत्वानिष्ठयोः, There are two different dhatus over here. Klishu vibadhane, klisha upatape. For both these dhatus, this particular sutram is applicable. Again, this is ubhaya vibhasha because klishu vibadhane, this is udit dhatu. Therefore, idagama sampurna rupena nishiddha asti. वेट धातु अस्ति ऊदित वेट अस्ति अतः इडागमः संपूर्ण रूपेण निषिध्यते क्लिश उपतापे इति तु सामान्य रूपेण अदित धातुः अस्ति सेट धातुः अस्ति अतः इडागमः निष्ठा प्रत्ययस्य इडागमः नित्यं भवति उभयत्र इन बोथ दीस केसेस द इडागम इज बीइंग मेड ऑप्शनल क्लिशत्वा निष्ठयोः वा इडागमः भवति क्लिष्ट्वा क्लिशित्वा क्लिष्टः क्लिशितः. He explains for both the dhatus. क्लिशु विबाधने इत्यस्य त्वायां विकल्पः सिद्धः एव निष्ठायां तु यस्य विभाषा इति प्रतिषेधः प्राप्नोति. This is for this particular first dhatu. क्लिश उपतापे इत्यस्य तु त्वायां निष्ठायां च नित्यं इडागमः प्राप्नोति. This is the second dhatu. So again, this is ubhaya vibhasha. In one case, from 0 he is bringing up to 50. In other case, from 100 he is pulling down to 50. Tadartham atra ubhayatra grahanam kriyate. We'll ignore the twa related things. We are going to revisit this sutra in the context of twa later on. Kaumudim pathamah idva syat klish upatape nityam prapte klishu vibadhane asya tvayam vikalpe siddhebi nisthayam nishedhe prapte vikalpaha. So for klishu, twa was anyway getting vikalpa, but nishtha was not getting vikalpa. That's why this particular sutra has been started. Klishitaha klishtaha ityatra rupani. So that's klishatva nishthayoho. One last sutram, pungascha, and we will stop. Set two ends over here anyway. Pungascha. So pung pavane iti dhatuhu. Vasutastu dhatu pathe dhatu dvayam vidyate. If you just do a pu over here, you have pung pavane and you have punya pavane. Out of these two, pung pavane is what is being discussed over here. Somebody is actually asking a question. Let me take it. What is this footer? Ata sutramidam prarabhyate. The question is, what is this footer doing over here? Is basically building the whole situation. It says that for this dhatu, vikalpena idagama ishyate. For this dhatu also, vikalpena idagama ishyate. For both of this, idam sutram acharyena likhitam asti. So for these two reasons, idam sutram prarabhyate means is being taught or is being written over here. It's a style of writing. Sutramidam prarabhyate or sutramidam prarabhate. Both ways you can justify it. Basically, the sutra is now being told with these 2 points in mind. The same thing is there for multiple slides. For these requirements, the sutra is being told. Iti artha. Astu agre gachamah antimam sutram tatra pung pavane iti bhadiganasya dhatuhu, not to be confused with punya, and therefore pungashangakarah asti atra. Pung pavaneti said dhatu, ayam dhatu ugit asti. So pu no will go away by its samnya. Pu iti ugit asti. Ataha nishtha pratyayasya idagamaha na bhavati. Shriyukaha kiti iti nishidhyate. Double kakar should be there. Shriyukaha kiti iti nishidhyate. Idagam nishedhe prapte. Vikalpena vidhanam bhavati. So vaikalpikaha idagamaha. Pungashtva nishthayoho va idagamaha bhavati. Putva or pavitva or putaha pavitaha. So pu, if you do not get an idagama, it is puta. If you decide to add idagama, pu plus ita plus the pavita. Further prakriya we will see later on. So shrukyaha iti iti pratishedhe prapte atra vikalpaha vidhiyate. Pungascha atra chakaraha asti. Chakarena tva tatha nishthayoho ubhayoho atra grahanam bhavati. So pung dhatoho vishaye api tva tatha nishtha pratyayo etayoho idagama vikalpaha atra uchyate iti atra arthah asti. So that's it. That actually completes the first and the second buckets. As I mentioned, this is too much involved. I also see the attendance getting reduced, which is understandable because this is really going into the crux of the sutras and we have just started. As I mentioned, all the remaining sutras in this particular section are basically going to be for pick 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3 dhatus and talk about their analysis, talk about their situation, talk about what happens in their case. So that's all how we are going to deal with the next 10 to 12 classes. Even if you go to Angakarya, it's going to be the same story. Even if you go to Tripadikarya, it's going to be the same story. The beauty for next few classes, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, is all in the details, or the devil, whatever you call, is all in the details. So it's perfectly fine to skip classes if you do not want to concentrate on details. But if this is the kind of stuff, and this is required for mastering Kridanta Prakaranam, if you would like to master, you should definitely be persistent. Do the homeworks more importantly, because all these things will be reflected back in the homework for your own benefit. And more importantly, whatever dhatus we have learned today, write down their nishtha pratyayanta, at least the idagama step, in one document. Later on, when we use angakarya, extend your prakriya to angakarya, then extend your prakriya to tripadikarya, and so on. So today, or sometimes this weekend, list down these dhatus and just add what happens after idagama along with the sutram. That's it. Keep that list as it is. Later on, when we study idagama, append the idagama work to that list. Later on, when we study tripadikarya, varnakarya, append those particular sutras to that list. Eventually, you will end up in the form. If you do this way, it will be very easy for you to complete the entire prakriya for all 2000 dhatus very easily. So that's it. Let's take a quick look at the exercise. Satish has already signed up. He told me yesterday that he has already signed up for the exercise even before the class was conducted. That's a great spirit. So let's take a look at the exercise. And I'm very happy that people who have not actually officially signed up are also sending their homeworks to me. It's perfectly fine. I might not reply, or it might be replies might be delayed because I'm busy preparing further classes. But I'll take a look at your exercises. I'll suggest if there are any corrections or whatever. So perfectly okay to send your exercises to me if you have done it, but you have not signed into the particular slot. So atra nishtha pratyoho prakriyayam idagamaha. The first question is yatha prushtam sanshepena prayojanam likhata. 10 different questions, each asking a particular prayojana. So id nisthayam iti sutre it ityasya kim prayojanam? Rusher lomasu ityasmin sutre lomasu ityasya kim prayojanam? Pungascha ityasmin sutre chakarasya kim prayojanam? So for each of them, I have asked a prayojana, 1122 line explanation you give for each of the prayojanas. So that's the first question. The second question, as I already mentioned, ऋष्यमत्वर संघुषास्वनाम अस्मिन् सूत्रे कौमुदिकारस्य वाक्यमस्ति अस्यात्वे फलं मन्दम् अस्याः पंक्तेः अर्थं स्पष्टीकुरुत इति अत्र होमवर्क गृहकार्यमस्ति. Next week we will have regular classes, plus we are going to have an additional session on Saturday. So homework discussion for 73, 74, 75 and 76 will be on next Saturday. I think I have received most of the answer sheets. One or two answer sheets I have not yet received. Those of you who have signed up over here and not sent me their answer sheets, please make sure to follow the deadline and send the answer sheet. So for 15th and 16th deadlines, I've got the answer sheets. Those of you who are signed up for exercise 75 and 73, if you have not yet sent me your answer sheets, please understand the deadline is 22nd and 23rd November. Deadline has to be followed. If you cannot follow the deadline, please remove your name. Otherwise, please make sure to submit the answers within the deadline. For these 4 homeworks, I don't know if 4 homeworks will be possible or not, but optimistically, for the 4 homeworks, the discussion will be on the next Saturday. So that's it. Samapayamaha agrima saptahe vargadvayam bhavishyati ubhayoho vargayoho nishtha pratyayoho idagama vishay adhyanam karishamahi. So in next class, probably 1 or 2 of these buckets. We also have a few nipatanas. We also have some additional karyas related to the idagama, idagama se dirghadesha, and so on. So all these we will continue in the next week. So next week, both the classes will definitely be idagama. If we are unable to complete the whole thing by that time, the week after that also 1 class we will need for idagama. So somebody is asking, please share the link for the sheet, idagama sheet. It will be updated on the course portal. It will also be added in the presentation. But those of you who would like to note it down right now, I'll just keep that screen open for 1 minute. You can write it down and you can start accessing it again. You can take a photocopy, for example, right now on your phone, bit.ly/idaagama, IDAAGAMA -sutra-list. This is the document that we will refer throughout this particular idagama section. I plan to, if required, I plan to do similar documents for Tripadi, Angakarya. Let's see. I mean, how the course goes, I decide based on that. But this document is super useful, and it puts a very beautiful structure for the entire idagama process. So we will continue to use this document for this particular set of classes. So समापयामः. अग्रिमसप्ताहे नियमितरूपेण कक्षाद्वयं भविष्यति. अष्टाध्यै जगन्माता यस्य चित्तात् समुत्थिता वेदानामुपकाराय तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. शब्दब्रह्म समाराध्य कृतवान्यो विलक्षणं सर्वाश्चर्यमिदं शास्त्रं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमष्टाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. धन्यवादः.